which is really good sutta on wholesome mental development, which is the practice that the Buddha taught. How to cultivate the mind in a wholesome way and cultivate the right kind of thoughts and abandon the wrong kind of thoughts, so that there can be freedom and happiness in our minds. But first we will start today with loving kindness meditation. So you can just relax, close your eyes, sit down in a comfortable position, whatever position that feels easy for you, that feels comfortable. Position that you like. Of course, having your back straight will help you in the long run, will give you energy and keep you from falling asleep, and also help your mental presence. And just smile for now. Relax and smile. Notice if there's any tension anywhere in your body. It can be in your shoulders, in your neck, in your abdomen, your legs, your feet, your hands, anywhere in your face, cheeks, eyes, lots of tensions around the eye sometimes. And inside the head, around the brain. Does it feel comfortable there? Can you relax? And smile. Whatever happened yesterday, this morning, this afternoon, just let it go. Whatever your previous mental state was, whether it was excitement or whether it was worry or anxiety or stress or anger, any states that was causing tension within you, just let it go for now. Relax. Doesn't matter anymore. Now we're here, doing this, and smiling. If you were happy all day, great. Carry it into your meditation. That is very good. And notice how good it feels to relax and feel the relief in the body and in the mind. And enjoy. Maybe your mind has been winding up all day. Now you can just let it go. Let it loose. Let it do its thing until it gets tired. Just let it unwind and smile. Notice all the little tensions in your body are starting to slowly dissolve. Takes a little bit of time. Takes a few minutes. We can't rush this. And as the body is dissolving all little blocks, all the little tensions it has accumulated, so does the mind. These are the instructions that the Buddha gave on developing awareness through joy and tranquility with each breath. And I usually begin with this to calm the mind down a little bit and to prepare the ground for loving kindness. And these two meditations are not so different, and they work together. They both are wonderful ways to work with our minds. But the loving kindness meditation has a lot of benefits, especially at the beginning. This is one of the meditations the Buddha said. The mind quickly comes into harmony, into coherence, collectedness. And so whenever you feel ready, I invite you to bring up this wonderful feeling of love inside your heart. Now, this is a very tangible, physical feeling as well as mental. It starts in the middle of your chest. Some experience a warm, glowing, perhaps luminous, perhaps radiant. Perhaps tingly feeling surrounding the heart, flowing out of the heart. Some people, their body temperature rises a little bit, or the cheeks become a little reddish. If you look carefully at someone that practices loving kindness meditation, you might notice that, in fact, light is actually coming out of their body. The Buddha even said this. One's appearance becomes bright. Just as one who feels anger's appearance is dark, one who cultivates the liberation of the mind through loving kindness, their features are bright. And feel it suffusing, radiating, drenching your whole body. And smile. We can't practice loving kindness meditation without being happy ourselves. We have to be happy ourselves. That's why we always start with ourselves, by feeling this within our own body. We can't share, we can't give away something we don't have. Some people encounter some difficulties. That's okay, everybody does. There's a few tricks you can use. First, you can just laugh. Laugh at how crazy your mind is sometimes. Are you really in control of this monkey mind? Who really is? When there's a lot of stress and worry and anxiety, did you tell yourself, oh, I haven't been stressful or worried for a very long time, I should do it now? No. It just appeared. Nobody wants to be stressed out or worried. Just let it go. Smile. It's just the mind doing its thing. It has been conditioned that way for a long time, and we just have to do the right practice to bring it back to wholesome, happy, uplifted. And if that doesn't even work for you, that's okay. Now, whatever comes up into your mind, forgive it. And forgive yourself. Thinking, I forgive you for being restless, you mind. Or to yourself directly. And truly feel the forgiveness. Forgive your mind, forgive yourself for keeping you away from the ability to experience love. In the moment it's happening. I forgive you for not being able to love right now. And feel that forgiveness in your heart. If there are any situations that arise in your mind, troublesome, whatever kind, forgive them. Forgive them for coming up. Forgive the people that are coming up. And if you've done something to someone, then you can ask for forgiveness. And genuinely feel it in your heart. Please forgive me for causing you pain, for causing you hurt, for not being able to love you unconditionally. This will help you dissolve the bigger blocks that are crystallized around your heart. And allow more space for the loving kindness to flow more easily and speed up the dissolving process. And if you feel the loving kindness through your whole body, and for you that is an easy thing to do, now you can remember to not just keep it for yourself and practice your generosity. And allow the love to flow everywhere in front of you, suffusing all of space. Not so much by pushing the feeling, more like drawing the blinds open and simply allowing it to shine out. Everywhere behind you, suffusing all of space. Only love. Everywhere to your left and to your right, all around, boundless love. Above and below, without any judgments, any opinions, without any conditions, no critical thoughts, unconditioned, boundless. If you notice tension in your body, just relax. This is not about pushing. This is about loving. About kindling. Growing. There are these 4 steps to right practice or wise practice. The first one is to recognize when the mind has wandered, when there's a distraction, when there's tension arising. 2 is to let it go, relax. The tension and the distraction, they come together. That is called the relaxed step. Pasambayam. Then the third step is to bring up the feeling of love again with a smile, bringing up the wholesome. States that are imbued with awareness themselves, like love, true love. Love that is not bound by any conditions. Then the fourth step is to preserve this, stay with this, cultivate this, and protect this. Staying with the love for as long as we can. Whenever a distraction arises again, the mind becomes distracted. We repeat these 4 steps. Samma Vayama, wise practice. The 4th fold of the path. Now slowly, I invite you to carry this mindfulness that you've been cultivating, this awareness imbued with loving kindness, and to allow your mind to flow to the Dhamma, to flow towards listening to the Dhamma. With love, one of the best ways of listening to the Dhamma is with love in your heart. Then it really works. And this is a discourse on the thoughts divided in 2 categories: wholesome and unwholesome. And the Buddha here is explaining how he, practically his chain of thought, or how he discovered awakening, or one of the facets. There are many suttas like this that are talking about his experience and him describing his experience or his path of understanding that he took to breakthrough, to awakening. And so that makes it a fairly interesting sutta and instructions. And this is at Savatthi, at Anathapindika's monastery. And he is addressing the bhikkhus, the monks, like this. Before my complete awakening, monks, while I was a bodhisattva, someone that is not yet awakened but is striving for liberation for many lifetimes, not yet fully awakened, I reflected, let me meditate, discerning and dividing my thoughts into two. Interesting. From then on, monks, I started discerning when I experienced thoughts rooted in outward desires, the mind flowing outward, thoughts rooted in anger or disliking, thoughts rooted in harm. And this is, sometimes we have a hard time with this one, but when the mind is inclining towards blaming or retaliating, and it can be very little, it doesn't need to be something very intense. It can be just the mind that has this thought of, oh, I should have said that to him or her, or I could have said that, or I should have, and next time I see that person, I will tell that person this and that. And this kind of mind is the mind of harming, violence, vihimsa. This is what we're talking about here. These making the first half. And on the other side, thoughts rooted in contentment, which is the opposite of longing outwardly. Thoughts rooted in non-anger, loving kindness, compassion, calm. Thoughts rooted in harmlessness. These making the second half. Then, while I was meditating, aware, intent, and resolute, there arose thoughts of outward desires in my mind, flowing outside to various objects, doesn't matter. Then I reflected, there arose these thoughts of outward desires in my mind. This leads to my own trouble, to others' trouble, and to the trouble of both. These thoughts impede conscious discernment. They come with tension in the mind, and they lead away from peace, from nibbana. Now this is talking about mainly the distractions that are embedded in our minds in all kinds of ways. Doesn't need to be really intense and coarse. It can be very subtle too. Then, as soon as I realized, and this is a very wonderful part because he is talking directly about the four awakened understanding, which is usually called the Four Noble Truths, but this is their direct application in the field of meditation. And this is how discernment and wisdom works. So as soon as I realized this leads to my own trouble, they faded away. Like touching the fire, we just draw our hand back. It hurts. Then when we realize that these are causing tension, the distractions, we are less likely to want to continue being distracted and wanting to relax and let go. Therefore, when we notice that these are not for our own good, some things are not for our own good, that's when we change. As soon as I realized that this leads to others' trouble, they faded away. As soon as I realized this leads to the trouble of both, they faded away. As soon as I realized these thoughts impede conscious discernment, they come with tension in the mind and they lead away from peace, from nibbana. They faded away. Now, this conscious discernment is literally that these outflows of the mind constantly flowing out to this and that. At this point, they are not conscious. They are not present state of mind. They are embedded in our psyche, and they are reactive. They are simply happening on their own through a force that we call bhava. We might get to learn a little bit more later about this, but for now we'll just read this sutta. And discerning anger, then while I was meditating, aware, intent, and resolute, there arose thoughts of anger in my mind, or repulsion, or dislike. I don't like this, I don't like that, not this, not that. Then I reflected, there arose these thoughts of anger in my mind. This leads to my own trouble, to others' trouble, and to the trouble of both. Sometimes people have a little bit a harder time understanding why would outward desires be troublesome for oneself, but anger is a little more obvious because nobody that's actually angry is happy, and that it's very clear, and that these are in fact troublesome, and that they're troublesome to the people around us too, because we do not keep these states only for ourselves, and we generously share them with everybody around us. And so even anger, and especially anger, and I think everyone's quite familiar with that, so I don't need to extend too much on this. And to the trouble of both, which is so very true. These thoughts impede conscious discernment. When we're angry, are we in a state to discern what is for our own good, for the good of others, or for the good of both? No, we're just in a reactive, obsessive state. It's not conscious anymore, it's just angry. The angry mind is not caring, it's angry. It's just angry. And there flows the river of anger. They come with tension in the mind, and this is also easier to see with anger. They lead away from peace, away from nibbana. As soon as I realized this is for my own trouble, for others people troubled, and for the trouble of both, these faded away. These thoughts impede conscious discernment, and they lead away from peace, from nibbana. They faded away. So I kept on letting go thoughts of anger as they arose, kept on releasing them and bringing them to an end. Then while I was meditating, aware, intent, and resolute, there arose thoughts of harm in my mind. Then I reflected, there arose these thoughts of harm in my mind. And this works, harm is a little closer to anger, but it's a step further. It's taking action. And this doesn't mean taking a stick and whacking someone on the head. That means processing, going forward with mental action of spitting venom at someone or an idea or a concept. And this is harm. This is also harm, but this is the further step from anger, is taking action, mental action. As the first action is always the mental action, then the verbal, then the physical. Hopefully it doesn't get too far, but this works in the exact same way. And when we have the wisdom or the discernment to notice this when this arises, we are better provided with the wisdom to let them go. And so I kept on letting go thoughts of anger or thoughts of harm as they arose, kept on releasing them and bringing them to an end. Oops. Whatever a monk frequently thinks about and contemplates, over time, this becomes the inclination of his mind. If a monk thinks thoughts of outward desires and frequently thinks about and dwells in that, he has left the thoughts of contentment to cultivate thoughts of outward desires. His mind is bent upon outward desires. If a monk thinks about thoughts of anger and frequently thinks about and dwells in that, he has left the thoughts of non-anger to cultivate the thoughts of anger. His mind is bent upon anger. If a monk thinks thoughts of violence or harm, and he frequently thinks about and dwells in that, he has left thoughts of harmlessness to cultivate thoughts of harm. His mind is bent upon harm. And this is the wonderful beauty of the Buddha's teaching and the direct efficacy of his teaching is to truly discern these states. And that's why this sutta is wonderful, because it really divides them into two categories: the wholesome states and the unwholesome states. And that is the core of the practice. And this is talking about wise practice or right effort. And this is called wholesome mental development. And this first half here that I just read to you is the first half of wholesome mental development, is to abandon any unwholesome states. Now the next one is to cultivate wholesome ones. But he gives here a really wonderful simile of the cowherd. Just as in the last month of the monsoon season, in late fall, when the crops are abundant, a cowherd would keep an eye on his cows. And to do so, he would have to beat, push, pluck, and keep his cows in check this way and that way with a stick. Why? Because he sees that as the leader of these cows, he could be punished, imprisoned, fined, or reproached for letting them graze the fruits of what does not belong to him. Now this is kind of talking about, this is talking about what happens also when our happiness is always around in all of the things around. And well, our happiness is dependent on these external things. And whether they are ours or not, and they have to be ours if we want to take them. And they come also with this interesting aspect of ownership and possession. And it is clarified in the second simile, which is coming. In the same way, monks, I saw danger, degradation, and defilement in unwholesome mental states. And in wholesome mental states, I saw freedom, benefit, and natural clarity. Now, discerning wholesome states, then I was meditating, aware, intent, and resolute, and there arose a thought of contentment in my mind. I reflected, there arises this thought of contentment in my mind. This does not bring about trouble for me, or for others, or for both. These thoughts are for the growth of conscious discernment. These being content is also being settled inside and being aware. Now the awareness is not disturbed by anything. It is very present. It is content. And in fact, awakening or nibbana could be said is reached by contentment, definitely. These thoughts bring no tension in the mind, and they lead to peace, to nibbana. I reflected, if I were to think about and dwell on these thoughts at night, I see nothing to fear that could arise from this. If I were to think about and dwell on these thoughts during the day, I see nothing to fear that could arise from this. If I were to think about and dwell in these thoughts day and night, I see nothing to fear that could arise from this. Now, this is the beauty of wholesome states, is that even though they're there, they're in fact helping us, and they're wonderful to have around. Thinking, if I were to think and reflect constantly, before long my body would become exhausted. With an exhausted body, the mind is unsettled. An unsettled mind is far from collected mental harmony, mental peace. I then calmed my mind and gathered it on itself. I unified it and brought it to peaceful harmony. Why? So that my mind be undistracted. And he's pointing at something quite interesting here, is that we are developing wholesome states, these thoughts of contentment and loving kindness, compassion, and helping, generosity, non-harming. And these thoughts are to be cultivated, and they are imbued with awareness. And one of the points that this sutta makes is that though these wholesome states are wonderful and uplifting, there is even better than this. And it is when we let go of any kind of thinking. And so we use these wholesome states to help the mind be at peace, help the mind be steady and tranquil. And then, like we practice in the loving kindness meditation, we then get to a point where the mind is so calm that bringing thoughts up in the mind is bringing up little tension. And so we even go beyond the wholesome thoughts, which is now we get into the wholesome states of mind, which are more associated with the awakening factors of awareness, investigation, energy, joy, bliss, and collectedness, tranquility, and steadiness of mind, without so much thinking. And he says the same thing about non-anger and harmlessness. Whatever a bhikkhu frequently thinks about and contemplates, over time this becomes the inclination of his mind. Now this is talking to monks, but monks are not that different from everybody else, so this is a good advice for everybody. If a monk thinks thoughts of contentment and frequently thinks about and dwells in that, he has left the thoughts of outward desires to cultivate the thoughts of contentment. His mind is bent upon contentment. Now there's either this, or there's either the wholesome or the unwholesome. There cannot be both together at the same time. If a monk thinks thoughts of non-anger, and he frequently thinks about and dwells in that, he has left the thoughts of anger to cultivate thoughts of non-anger. His mind is bent upon non-anger. Loving kindness, compassion, acceptance, forgiveness, all these. If a monk thinks thoughts of harmlessness, and he frequently thinks about and dwells in that, he has left the thoughts of harm to cultivate thoughts of harmlessness. His mind is bent upon harmlessness. And now the second simile of the cowherd, just as in the last month of the summer season, when all the crops have been harvested in the village. Now this is in India, this is not here. The seasons are a little bit different. A cowherd would keep an eye on his cows at the root of a tree, in the open, only needing to be aware thus there are the cows. In the same way, monks, I only need to be aware. I only needed to be aware. There are the wholesome mental states. And this is the beauty of wholesome mental states, is that they are harmless, they are beneficial, and we don't need to worry about poking our mind here and there and controlling it from going here and there when we have a wholesome, uplifted mind that is constantly growing and cultivating loving kindness, compassion, forgiveness, joy, calm, generosity. And a mind like this only needs to be looked after to make sure that it stays like that. There is the wholesome mind, and so that it can continue. But we don't need to try and control it or try to push it or block it, or it's not dangerous. It's not going to take anything that is not ours. It's fully content. And this is the beauty also of feeding our happiness from the inside, from the meditation. Now, there's no danger in feeding from the happiness within. It's not hurting anybody. It's not taking anyone's possession. It's not costing you anything. It's not costing anybody anything, in fact. It's not depending on so many conditions, outside conditions that are so ephemeral, so volatile. And when we cultivate this bliss of meditation and contentment, it's always there. And it's blameless. And we only need to make sure, in fact, that it stays there. That's all we need to do. Isn't that simple? And now the part on natural samadhi, the Dhamma samadhi. Without slackening, monks, uncurbed my effort was. Unconfused awareness started streaming. My body became calm and free of tension. My mind was collected and harmonious. Then entering the jhanas, letting go of all outwards desires, and letting go of unwholesome mental states, still attended by thinking and imagining, with the blissful happiness born of letting go. I understood and abided in the first level of meditation. Now this is where these wholesome thoughts are there, and we cultivate still these wholesome thoughts in the first level. Then with the calming of thinking and reflection, with inner tranquilization, my mind became unified without thinking and reflection, with the blissful happiness born of mental unity. I understood and dwell in the second level of meditation. Now this is where he explained that his mind felt even better beyond the thoughts, without any thoughts. It was tiring his body and his mind. With the calming of bliss, one abides in. I abided in mental steadiness, present and fully aware, experiencing happiness within my body, a state which the awakened ones describe as steady presence of mind. This is a pleasant abiding. I understood and abided in the third level of meditation. Now calm is settling in and steadiness of mind, which is even better than this excited joy that we might feel sometimes. The bliss and joy are still very much present, but it's much calmer and delightful. Leaving behind the notion of happiness and unhappiness with the settling of mental gladness and affliction. Now these concepts are kind of left behind, even the concepts, because there's great mental steadiness, great mental poise at this point, with neither pain nor pleasure, Well, pleasure, yes, but very not excited pleasure. Purified by unmoving presence. I understood and abided in the fourth level of meditation. With this composed and collected mind, wholly cleansed and purified, clear and open, rid of imperfections, having become soft and malleable, straight and unwavering, I directed it and inclined it to the complete calming of the mental movements. I understood as it really was. This is tension. This is the increase of tension. This is the release from tension. And this is how to release the tension. And this is the investigating line. This is how we develop wisdom. The distractions are causing tension. Relaxing is moving away from it. And continually practicing this is practicing the path to release the tension. I understood thus as it really was. These are the mental movements. This is the increase of the mental movements. This is the release from the mental movements. This is how to release the mental movements. And this is the core of the Buddhist teaching, is understanding the mind and how it moves and how to calm it, how to pacify it. Continually observing and understanding in this way, my mind was released from the inclination from clinging outwardly, from the inclination of projecting in the future, from the inclination to negligence. In that release, I knew this is release. Unwholesome states have been overcome. Lived is the holy life, the spiritual life. Done is what should be done. There is no more conceit here. And this was the third understanding which I realized on the last part of the night. Blindness was driven away, and clear understanding arose. Darkness was driven away, and light arose, just as happens in one who meditates, aware, intent, and resolute. And I haven't had time to translate the last simile, so I will borrow Venerable Bhikkhu Bodhi's translation here. Suppose, monks, that in a wooded range there was a great low-lying marsh near with a large herd of deer, where a large herd of deer lived. Then a man appeared desiring their ruin, harm, and bondage, and he closed off the safe and good path to be travelled on with joy. And he opened up a false path and put out a decoy and set up a dummy, so that the large herd of deer might later come upon calamity, disaster, and loss. But another man came desiring their good, welfare, and protection. And he reopened the safe and good path that led to their happiness, and he closed off the false path, and he removed the decoy and destroyed the dummy, so that the large herd of deer might later come to growth, increase, and fulfillment. Monks, I have given this simile in order to convey a meaning. This is the meaning. The great low-lying marsh is a term for all outwards distractions. The large herd of deer is a term for all living beings. The man desiring their ruin, harm, and bondage is a term for Mara. The false path is a term for the wrong eightfold path, that is, wrong view, wrong intention, wrong speech, wrong action, wrong livelihood, wrong effort, wrong mindfulness, and wrong concentration or collectedness. The decoy is a term for delight, for longing and wanting outwardly, distractions. The dummy is a term for blindness, The man desiring their good welfare and protection is the term for the Tathagata, accomplished and fully awakened. The safe and good path to be traveled on with joy is a term for this noble eight-spoked path, which is right view, right intention, right speech, right action, right livelihood, right effort, right mindfulness, and right collectedness, or meditation. So, monks, the safe and good path to be traveled on joyfully has been reopened. The wrong path has been closed off, the decoy removed, the dummy destroyed. What should be done for his disciples out of compassion by a teacher who seeks their welfare and has compassion for them, that I have done for you, monks. These are these root of trees, these are empty huts. Meditate, monks, do not delay, else you will regret it later. This is our instruction to you. That is what the Blessed One said. The monks were satisfied and delighted in the Blessed One's words. Sadhu, sadhu, sadhu. All right, this was a bit of a longer sutta. Did you understand? Or did I talk for half an hour to the forest fairies? The forest devas here of the Kuti Grove. Okay. Do you have any questions? Good.
Bhante, you say that you can have either the wholesome thoughts or not. You can't have both at the same time when you're in the jhanas.
Yes.
Or so are you suggesting that if you have unwholesome thoughts while you're in the jhanas, then you're just, for that time that thought is there, that then you're out of the jhana, you're jumping in and out of it?
Yeah. Well, jhana is from the word, the root di, and di is has many translations possible. Seeing, understanding, and this is what we do in meditation. We're practicing this clarity of mind, seeing. And these jhanas are simply used as a kind of a roadmap of our understanding. So this first jhana, for example, there are different factors like the joy of letting go and the thinking and imagining are still there, thinking and reflection. Now at that time, it's difficult at that time to really see it as a definitive, clear-cut thing. And I mean, it doesn't really work like that. The mind is more of a jungle than this. And we have to bushwhack in the jungle for a little bit and make a path. And we see markers along the path. And it becomes clearer and clearer. Now there are wholesome tree species that we can develop that will help us walk the path in the forest. And so when you'll notice, it's when you with the feeling of loving kindness, it's not so much that hatred will just kick in. It's not really clear like that. It will be more like the mind will start getting bored, maybe, or it will start getting dull, and it will lose interest, and then mindfulness starts to slip, and then the loving kindness drops a little bit, and when that happens, this opens the door for other states to come in. And this is fairly unconscious, because these unwholesome states, as they creep in, they're not really conscious. They're just coming up. They're just coming up. And that's why we're practicing the loving kindness, is to make this and that's the power of loving kindness, is that it really makes it clear, a definite break between the loving kindness and any other kinds of thinking. Because if the feeling of loving kindness is gone, then it's gone. It's not there anymore. Now you're with something else, which who knows what it is, but now it has gone. But the transition, to try to answer your question as directly as I can, which is not easy because it's not clear-cut like that, but there is no... There is more of a the mindfulness will get dull, and then unwholesome things, unwholesome states will creep in. But just to notice this, somebody needs quite good awareness, and that's what we're cultivating all the time. In fact, that's the practice. So we it is these states are conditioned within our psyche. So what we're doing here is that, like I said, this is a talk on wholesome mental development, and because the mind gets conditioned, whether we like it or not, by everything that we do. And it leaves an impression on the mind, these bhavas, these habitual tendencies that we develop by liking this or that, disliking this or that. It's like writing our hard drive every time. It's like we're accumulating this all the time. And it stays, unless we actually purify it, it sticks with us. And when these unwholesome states arise, they come in because the mindfulness has kind of gotten down a little bit. Our mindfulness slips, and then we slip into these just pre-programmed sankharas, activities in the mind that are pre-programmed. And perhaps I should say that not so much this state is it's either this or that completely. It's either unwholesome or wholesome completely. Perhaps more that these are wholesome states and these are unwholesome states. And just to know that is what we need to do the work, and what we need to do the triage in our mind, and to sort them out so that we can always cultivate towards wholesome states. And perhaps what I meant was closer to when there is this feeling of loving kindness, in all direction, and that's why it's so important to develop it in that way, as a feeling that is radiating in all directions. And so that's one step, is the feeling. That's very important, which is a very wholesome feeling. And the second step is the boundless part, which that is the mental release. That is very important in this practice. And so when it is done in that way, it is completely open, then there are no unwholesome states in the mind. And at that point, you can be sure that if this recollection, or if this awareness of this broad, expansive, open, loving kindness is happening, and if it fades away in any kind of way, then something else is happening in the mind. And that's what I meant more by this, is that when there's this presence of loving kindness in all directions, completely boundless, then there's only that. There's only love. And then whatever comes in, then the feeling will diminish. The feeling will change, because it has to be, the mind has to be completely released in that respect to be able to do that. If another thought comes in, that means it's not completely with the loving kindness. That means it's not fully there. So that means there's a little bit of an unwholesome thing happening. So it's not clear cut, no.
Thank you.
Sadhu, sadhu. Okay. Well, that was the longer explanation. Good. Well, if there's no other questions, we will share merits and say goodbye. May suffering ones be suffering free, and the fear-struck fearless be. May the grieving shed all grief, and may all beings find relief. May all beings share this merit that we have thus acquired for the acquisition of all kinds of happiness. May beings inhabiting space and earth, devas and nagas of mighty powers, share this merit of ours. May they long protect the Buddha Sasana and attain Nibbana. Sadhu, sadhu, sadhu.
Sad.
Take good care of yourselves. Good to see you all. And all protections be with you, and hopefully see you sometime soon.